I have to start with a confession. I'm just a simple teacher, a simple man. I don't have PhDs, books, or studies published. And I'm not a leading figure in education or well-being. What I do have is a strong feeling of love and care regarding children and their education, with over 20 years of experience working with children around the world. My educational philosophy is very simple. If children are happy, they can learn anything. They can do and achieve anything they want. They can be successful and whole as a person. And I'm here today to talk about this. But before I start, I will ask you one question. Are you happy today? Or do you want to be happy? According to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, happiness is the meaning of life, the whole aim and the end of the human existence. So, if your answer to my question is yes, then Aristotle could be right in the end, as all human beings are seeking happiness. Researchers are finding that attaining happiness is really a global pursuit. So why do I believe education should be the foundation of the current and future education system? It's very simple. There is a strong scientific evidence about the connection between well-being, happiness, and academic success. So, if we can provide an educational system and environment where children can be happy, they will learn better, they will perform better, and they will attain better. Isn't this the goal of any educational system? When children are enrolled in school, they start a never-ending series of tests and contests to see who can get the highest grades, the highest scores on standardized tests, win the most honors, and get into the best university and colleges. It's a tough competition. And with what result? Research analyzing competition from private schools and external school leaving exams shows that it appears to have a relatively large positive impact on students' achievement, but it negatively has strong negative effects on students' attitude towards learning, and they lead to decreased happiness and satisfaction with school. The conclusion is obvious. Standard graded tests and exams, school competition, and the traditional teaching methods have positive effects on students' achievements, but they negatively affect students' teachers' relationships and mental and emotional outcomes. They decrease children's happiness and make learning less joyful. In the past 15 years, I did a small educational experiment with all my classes, but mostly with my seniors. I asked my students to answer one question. What do you want from your life? Or what personal outcomes do you want to have in life? I got all kinds of answers, from money, a good job, social status, fame, to love, happiness, respect, family, honesty, and so on. But most importantly, the majority of my students believed that the non-materialistic outcomes were the essential ones. Then I asked them a second question. How many of these things do you learn in school? Or how does school help you in any way to achieve your personal outcomes? So what do you think? A few things? A lot? I let you to decide, but most of my students said that just few of their desired outcomes were cultivated in school. In a recent study, even a basic cost-benefit analysis shows that students' achievement is more important only from an economic perspective. Children's happiness appears to be more important when using adult life satisfaction as an outcome measure instead of income. developing happiness skills should be a mandatory task for the education system. Many educators have proposed this in the past, but we now have the data to show how just important happiness is, and how children are suffering from a lack of happiness. Based on the recent research about children's happiness and their mental conditions, what we find out in a nutshell is that, firstly, there has been a significant decrease in the children's overall life satisfaction in the past 10 years. Secondly, our children seems to be getting more anxious and depressed. The number of 16 years olds with anxiety and depression has nearly doubled in the last 30 years. Lastly, there has been a significant decrease in happiness and life satisfaction among teenagers, doubled by a sustained dip in happiness with school and schoolwork. Now, the data doesn't really show us why children appear to be increasingly experiencing mental and emotional issues. Certainly, though, there is a greater need to understand children's mental and emotional issues to get a better feel with what may be behind the causes of such problems, and just as importantly, what promotes good mental and emotional health in children. The situation has now become critical and urgent. And if we add COVID-19 challenges, just to give you an example, 25% of American young adults seriously considering committing suicide during lockdown. It's obvious we are facing a major crisis. The next generation needs to grow and develop healthily, as they will be the ones who are leading us in the next 20-30 years. Now, after shedding some light on the actual situation, I want to go back to the reason why I'm here: happiness. Happiness is an attitude. It comes from inside and can be learned by anybody. Indeed, one study by Mathieu Ricard concludes that happiness, in a sense of deep, lasting well-being, is a skill that can be learned with committed effort. So let me now show you the connection between happiness and learning. Multiple studies show clear evidence that social and emotional education helps to build effective learning habits and leads to improved academic achievement. Children who developed emotional learning skills showed an improvement in their academic behavior and attainment. Happy students are likely to learn better and more effectively. Those who are taught happiness skills showed a sharp improvement in their well-being and in their academic results. And the last point is the most important. Out of the child's characteristics, happiness and emotional health is the most important predictor of adulthood happiness, more important than any academical qualification a person can achieve. So with that in mind, what should we change? One big thing, it would be to rethink and reshape the school environment. So how can we manage our classroom environment to improve children's happiness level and consequently their learning and performance? And here I'm going to tell you my personal story. Until 2013, I taught my IB classes in a very traditional way. But that summer, I realized that neither my students or I were happy with the way things were. So I decided to make a change. I thought, how can I make my students to have a better attitude towards learning? And what can I do to help them to manage their efforts better? As there was very little that I could do about the content and the amount of work they had to do, I started to think about the way I was teaching and how I could change this. What would make my students happier? So firstly, I changed the physical environment. I told my students to feel themselves comfortable, like in their homes, and gave them more personal space. I created an open and relaxed classroom environment where my students could find that comfortable space that allowed them to get into the learning mindset. Secondly, I started to work on the mental and emotional environment, providing them with a growth mindset. Lesson by lesson, I try to make them understand that if they will embrace a growth mindset, they would learn better, and as a consequence, they will perform better. Things like focus on learning, mistakes are okay, hard work is a good sign, you can have your own pace, or you own your learning, slowly became things that mattered in my class. Lastly, maybe the most important but also the hardest, I changed the emotional environment, giving my students a voice and a place where they can feel welcomed and safe to express their feelings. We started by establishing open and flexible class agreements, like everybody's unique, no judgment, no hiding of individual mistakes, open constructive criticism. The whole atmosphere became so supportive towards learning, and the peer instruction and evaluation created a real culture of feedback. Really, it was incredible. You can't imagine how good they become at this. But what helped the most was to build the trust between themselves and between us. And I strongly believe that was the most important thing. What happened was amazing as they started to focus on learning and became more happier, regardless their achievements, just knowing that they could improve. After 2 years, at the end of the course, the IB final results improved more than 50%. And they did it by themselves. Believe me, all I did was to try to make them and their time in my class happier. Of course, this is not a magical formula, and it didn't work perfectly for the next cohorts, but it did prove me one more time that improving happiness levels in the class did make my students to change their attitude towards learning and improve their efforts by themselves, which led to better results. In conclusion, what can we do? We, as educators, as parents, as a whole society, we have a duty to look after our children and teach them how to take care of their own physical, mental, and emotional well-being. We, all of us, have to recognize that happiness is an important mean and aim of education and of life itself. We need to cultivate learning spaces where children can be happy. We need to get all educators involved. Educators who are happy and content with what they're doing. We have to make schools happy places. Happy children growing in happy schools will seize their educational opportunities with joy and passion, and they will also contribute to others' happiness. If children are to be happy in schools, teachers should be the same. Happier teachers teach better, and happier children learn better. It's quite simple. I believe happiness should be at the heart of the education, and schools have the tools to put it there. So, place happiness and well-being at the center of children education. Implement policies and curricula designed to promote well-being and happiness, and teach them in every class when possible. Be proactive, not reactive. Build trust, as it's so important. Create and promote culture of trust between teachers and students. And don't forget, every teacher is a well-being and happiness teacher. Promote and create a strong culture of well-being and happiness among teachers and staff. They will teach by example. It's very simple. We have to make children happy. It's all that matters in the end. Thank you very much.